Present here and now, and in the awareness of God's presence, let us pray. Father, Mother God, we give thanks for this opportunity to be open to the awareness of your presence. As we allow ourselves to be open to experience this moment as it is, as every moment is. We feel the exposure to the miracles. We feel ourselves being connected with you and with all. In this moment, connection, joy, insights stream through us. And as we drink this in, we recognize that this is love. And we allow that to flow from us into this moment, bringing joy, bringing guidance, bringing love. For this opportunity to be a messenger of your love, we give thanks. So it is that together we say, Amen. Well, that call came in just in time.
I'm sorry, it's a new phone. I haven't figured that out yet. Sorry.
So, what'll it be? Change or die? Well, that's kind of gruff, isn't it? A lot of transition going on in our community right now. And I thought it might be time to address this concept of change. It turns out we're going to be doing it in several parts. Robert Brumet, easy for me to say, Robert Brumet, who was one of my favorite teachers in ministerial school. He's written a couple of books. One of the books, Finding Yourself in Transition, turns out it was one of our textbooks, not surprisingly, during ministerial school. But in that book, he talks about the process of transition as being one of endings, of voids, and new beginnings. And he makes the point that each of these stages is experienced by everyone in transition. So we're going to be talking about endings today. We're going to be talking about the void next week, and we're going to be talking about new beginnings the following week. So my life is structured here for at least 3 weeks. So how many of you have been through any transition here recently? Okay. We actually go through transitions every day. It turns out that in the time it takes me to speak this sentence, comma, over 50 million cells in your body have died and been replaced. Someone pulled out their calculator, and based upon an estimated 50 trillion cells in the typical body, they calculated that, well, that must mean that our body is replaced every 7 years. Well, no, it's not, because each of our cells, as you can imagine, has a different functional life. Cells in the intestines are replaced about every 4 days. Cells in the brain are typically not replaced. They're added to, but typically not replaced. And so every function within our body has a certain cell life. And so we are going through transition. And indeed, if we didn't have the opportunity for things to die, we would not live. We would be, in effect, concretized, and that can't be comfortable. So we are in a process of transition. And the question is, are we able to allow those transitions to occur powerfully? Or will we resist transition, and will we become a prisoner of our old self. There's in Robert Brumet's book, he speaks of transitions multiple times. He says transition may be an uncomfortable time, yet it is always a meaningful time. It is a time when the old order of our life is disrupted. It's a time when our old way of being is disturbed. It may even be, yeah, it may even be a time when our sense of reality is challenged. Though painful, these can be extremely significant times in our life. Times of transition are wonderful opportunities to gain strength and wisdom, opportunities to experience spiritual breakthroughs and healings. Transition may provide the breakthrough necessary to live an entirely different life, not just the old life in a new way, but an entirely new life. Gene Houston writes, in times of suffering, when you feel abandoned, perhaps even annihilated, there is occurring at levels deeper than your pain the entry of the sacred, the possibility of redemption. Wounding opens the doors of our sensibility to a larger reality, which is blocked by our habituated and conditioned point of view. Pathos, suffering, gives us eyes and ears to see and hear what our normal eyes and ears cannot. This concept of transitions being a powerful time, not just for moving, not just for changing, but for growing, for expanding, for becoming wiser, for becoming more insightful, and for becoming a model for those around us who are also going to be going through transition, to show them the way to move gracefully and powerfully through this process of change that we are all exposed to. So there's the process of transition is one that we move out of something that we are familiar with into something that we're unfamiliar with. And that process is often a very fearful process. It certainly has anxiety associated with it. Whether or not we buy into that anxiety is another question. But it certainly has the opportunity for anxiety because we are leaving the familiar for something unfamiliar. And when you think about it, we are all in that process of moving from where we were to where we're going to be, and where we're going to be is not going to be where we were, just by definition. There's Brumet also offers us this, that we can truly experience a new beginning only when we have fully dealt with the ending that preceded it. Otherwise, we simply carry the unfinished business of the past into the future. So it's not very helpful for us as we are moving and growing for us to grab this and carry it with us and set it over here and step into that new experience as if we stepped into the old experience. So the process of releasing that which we have left allows us the opportunity to enter into that which we are coming to. And this process of releasing that can engage grief. Grief is a natural response. Grief is a response to an emotional pain, and that emotional pain can be brought about by a number of things, but often it is having to leave something behind. But that grief is not just a symptom of the change. It's not just a symptom of being wounded, but is a part of the very process by which we are healed. When we allow ourselves to grieve fully our loss, rather than avoiding its lesson by seeking another external mirror, we are reclaiming the natural self. We are then, like the prodigal son, returning to the Father after a long sojourn in a faraway country. Grieving our loss is a major step in coming home to our true self. Last night I texted Michael, and Michael has offered me insight into his process. As you may not know, Michael is no longer able to play the guitar. After 45 years of being a professional guitar player, he is at the stage where professional guitar playing is a matter of the past. And I'll share with you, assuming that you have given me permission, I'll share with the congregation that he has said that this has been really painful, as you can imagine. I mean, you've been doing something that you love, that you enjoy, that other people enjoy, that they honor you for your skills in this, and you're no longer able to do it. How would that make you feel? It's a process of grieving that allows us to heal that pain. And it's a natural part of the process. So as Michael said to me, he says, I've cried a lot and I will cry more. But but I recognize that there is no other choice. I must move on. And there's excitement in moving on. New things to engage. He's already put together a list of things that he wants to spend his time on now, and these are exciting things for him. So having the insight, the foresight, to recognize that this which I have left, while it is painful to be leaving that, my future is something that is a powerful opportunity for us to carry on. So that release, as Brumet put it, said much of our old way of life, and indeed much of our identity itself, was formed as a response to some need that once existed. As children, we adapted ourselves to the needs and desires of our family in order to get our own needs met. We formed beliefs, attitudes, and behavior patterns that may have served us well in our childhood. 30 or 40 years later, however, these same patterns may enslave us and make our life bitter because of the circumstances of our life are vastly different. The patterns of thinking, feeling, and behavior that once existed to serve and protect us may now keep us in bondage. The Israelites' bondage in Egypt is symbolic of the condition of becoming a prisoner of our past. And with Michael's example that he has offered me to share, this being a guitar player, if he hangs on to that, right? If he carries that over here, the grieving will not only continue, but the opportunities that are afforded in this new way of life are not going to be so apparent. So it's going to be more of a struggle here if we hang on to that in the past. And this process of moving through transitions, if we knowingly move through transitions, if we move through transitions with awareness, then we are empowered to engage a new life that is as powerful, perhaps as wonderful as the life that we left. The interesting thing is having had this experience of 45 years of passionate about something, he knows what that feeling is like. And there is a motivation to engage and to embrace that kind of passion in this new experience. So having had that experience of 45 years of a passionate engagement allows a motivation to say, oh, well, what am I going to engage now? What is it now that is going to turn my crank? What is now going to cause me to pop up out of bed in the morning? What is going to cause me to be joyful and excited about my day-to-day? So that is a powerful lesson for us, and it is also a lesson that if we engage it consciously, we can find our minute-to-minute, even through the transition, we can find our minute-to-minute to be an exciting opportunity for us to live life fully. as referenced here in this passage, the Bible has many different stories about transition. And virtually every book in the Bible is going to give you some exposure to a transition that is happening in the life of the writer. But the Israelites' move from Egypt into Canaan is an excellent metaphor for this process of transition. We have the Israelites that they moved, the Hebrews, they moved to Egypt for a reason. Do you recall what that reason was? That they moved out of Canaan down into Egypt. Starvation in the land. And you may recall the story of Jacob and his sons. Esau was the older son. He was given the right, I'm sorry. Yes. Okay, so he had this son who was arrogant would be one way to put it, but he was not thought of well by his brothers, and he was excluded from the family. In fact, he was sold into slavery by his brothers. Joseph ended up being sold into slavery in Egypt, and it turns out that Joseph had expressed some high level of skills, and he rose in the ranks of slavery and became actually a member of the court, and was so astute in the advice that he gave the Pharaoh that the Pharaoh eventually put him in charge of the grain stores of Egypt, the harvest of Egypt. And so when the Israelites, when the Hebrews were starving, they went to Egypt. Joseph met his brothers, it turns out, and forgave them. There's a whole story around that forgiveness process. But the Israelites found a place in Egypt that they survived the famine. But they multiplied quickly, and over the course of 400 years, they became a substantial part of the population of Egypt. The Pharaoh was starting to get worried about this whole community of Hebrews, that he gave instruction to his slaveholders to treat the Hebrews with substantial pain. Work them hard, keep them suppressed. We don't want them to gain power in the country. And so over the course of the 400 years, the Israelites found themselves enslaved by the Egyptians, where that enslavement came about after they voluntarily moved to Egypt because of the famine. So here's an example of things of the past that served us well is no longer serving us now. And so the Pharaoh gave instructions for this enslavement that eventually caused the Hebrews to say, wait a minute, this isn't right. And they were led out of Egypt. Well, who were they led out of Egypt by? Moses, it turns out, was born to a Hebrew mother at a time when the Pharaoh was saying to all of the midwives, make sure that there are no male Hebrews that are left alive. Make sure that there are no male births that are left alive. Kill all of the Hebrew sons. At that time, Moses' mother put him in a basket. The basket was sealed with pitch. He was hidden in the reeds of the water near where one of the princesses of the Pharaoh would bathe. The Pharaoh's princess daughter discovered the Hebrew child, took him in, and it turns out that Moses' older sister was watching as the Pharaoh's princess found Moses. So she approached the princess. She said, I can find a Hebrew wet nurse for the child if you choose. And the princess, not having the capacity at that point in time to feed the child, said, yes, let's do that. Turns out the wet nurse was Moses' mother. Okay, so this was all a planned way to get Moses out of danger of being killed by the midwives. This man, Moses, grew to be a man. He found that as a man, he encountered an Egyptian that was beating a Hebrew, beating a slave. And he was so incensed by this that he killed the Egyptian who was beating the Hebrew slave, which caused Moses to no longer be a welcome member of the court of the Pharaoh, and he fled to be safe. And so he fled to Midian, stayed there for 40 years. We'll talk about 40. 40 is, in the biblical sense, 40 is a number that expresses enough time for completion. So we have 40 days of Jesus off being tempted by the devil. We have 40 days or 40 years of Moses being in Midian before he returned to lead the slaves out of Egypt. So this metaphor of the Exodus from Egypt is an illustration that when an ending occurs, it usually occurs because of something. Something is stimulating that ending. And we find that here. Michael has a medical condition that is stimulating the ending. But the ending is not the end. It is merely the beginning of the transition. And that transition is one with great opportunity. The Chinese character for crisis is one that is made up of two characters of danger and opportunity. And indeed, the crisis that we encounter in transition can be dangerous if we are not willing to move through the transition with grace. But it is chock full of opportunity. The question is, what kind of opportunity do we have now in our new situation, in our new way of life? Well, that process of moving through the transition of the ending, the void, and the new beginning is a way to let that opportunity flower, to let that opportunity, to let the blossom of that opportunity unfold. Brumet talks about the 4 stages of the ending. The 4 stages of the ending being the disengagement. This is kind of an outward thing. The disengagement of Michael, for instance, is disengaging from the band. We have here an empty chair, right? We're leaving this empty chair here, not only to honor Michael's presence or absence from the band, but we're also leaving that chair there as an opportunity for us to bring in another guitarist, right? So we have the disengagement stage That's mostly an exterior thing. Then we have the disidentification. The disidentification is, I am a minister. Well, over the course of the next year, I will be engaging or disengaging from ministry and engaging something else. But that disengagement is an exterior activity. Then we have the disidentification, which is an interior activity. Oh man, I'm no longer a minister. I don't have to go into, I don't have to do church on Sunday morning. No. I don't have the identity of a minister any longer, at least a minister of a community. Then we have so we have the disengagement, we have the disidentification, then we have the disenchantment. Disenchantment might be illustrated by when we were 4, 5, 3, 6, in that age, we had this idea of Santa Claus, right? And Santa Claus was something that, wow, here it is, Halloween. What's Santa Claus going to bring me in 2 months? And this enchantment with Santa Claus becomes one of disenchantment when you didn't get what you wanted, or the other kids in class are talking about the major fraud that has been perpetrated by their parents. And so this disenchantment with Santa Claus is something that is a necessary stage, right? As Brumet put it, pity the adult that did not believe in Santa Claus, and pity the adult that still believes in Santa Claus. Right? The disenchantment is an important stage. And then the disorientation. I'm no longer a minister. I no longer believe in Santa Claus. So the disorientation is a stage that precedes the void. We'll talk about the void next week. But it's important for us to realize that as we go through transitions, not if, but as we go through transitions, we have an extraordinary opportunity to behold a new way of being, a new environment, and a new activity, new relationships, new opportunities for us to explore a deeper aspect of self. And if we don't go through the transition consciously, we may in fact be imprisoned by the grieving of the loss of the past. So as we go through these transitions, I encourage you to step forward with a bright outlook, to step forward with a recognition that this is our opportunity to grow and to become more familiar with who we really are. We're no longer a minister. We're no longer a guitar player. We're no longer that which we have left in the past. But wow, what is this that is going to be here in our future? It is a matter of what? Choice. And we have the power to make that choice. We have the power to step into our transitions with grace and enthusiasm. We'll have our meditation. As we settle into this moment, let's bring forth a transition that has happened in the past. Let us consider how that transition went. The pain that was involved, the process that we addressed as we were experiencing that pain, and the movement into our new condition, into our new situation, into our new relationship. As we look upon those transitions, we can heal that which has occurred. Yes, grieving is an important part of it, but we also can take a look at how it unfolded and recognize those things that could have been done more effectively, those things that were done effectively. Look at the transition from the aspect of the doctor's eye, if you will. As a doctor might analyze your symptoms and come to a conclusion on the illness that you're experiencing. So we can look at our transitions with an analytical eye. What was it that I had to leave? What was the grieving that I experienced, if any? Did I experience grief or did I suppress it? If I experienced grief and processed the grief and allowed that grief to heal the wound that was caused by that transition, good on you. But if that grief was suppressed, it is time to reconsider the pain that was experienced in the transition. And allow yourself to grieve that. To feel, fully feel that pain of separation, that pain of change, that pain of transition. Allow yourself to settle into that experience. Breathing in and breathing out, recognizing that yes, that transition happened, and yes, that grief may not have been processed at the time, but now we can allow that grief to come up. The relationships that changed, the conditions in our lives that changed. Allow yourself to fully feel that. Then moving on through the transition, recognizing in the new situation, in the new condition, in the new relationship, whatever it is that has changed, that in your new situation, that there are some wonderful opportunities there. We may not yet have recognized those. We may have still been hanging on to the past and the changes that were necessary, but were undesired. Let's move into our new condition, into our new relationship, into our new situation, whatever that may be, and recognize that the opportunities that are in this situation are continuing to unfold. We have survived the transition, and now we are empowered to find all of the glory and wonder in our new situation. Breathing in and breathing out. Where are you finding your joy now? What other opportunities for joy are you presented with now? How are you empowered to handle change now? Allow yourself to expand your horizons in the new condition, in the new situation. Allow yourself to ask the question, where am I now? Who am I now? What is my next step now? Allow those questions to be continued to be answered, continued to be asked. As we explore self-inquiry on Wednesday evening, consider this to be like an onion, and we are asking the question, who am I now? And recognizing that whatever answer I come up with is going to take us to another level. Another level of the onion. And at that level of the onion, the question, who am I, is still valid. Regardless of our circumstances now, regardless of our situation now, who am I? Continues to be our key question. Who am I in this new condition? Who am I in this new circumstance, in this new relationship? Who am I? Allowing that question to rest. We come back into this time and space, sharing the words of Lord's Prayer. Take an offering for unity now. As we take our offerings in our hands, let us bless them with this offering statement. Together, please. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I give in love because I trust in God. And once again, Trinity Damask and irreverence.